I'm going to call the meeting to order. First off, thank you all for coming. Tonight, I guess we're going to get an opportunity to provide some more information and to have a discussion about some things. Luckily, as well, most of you are here for one issue, and it happens to be the first item on the agenda right after we approve a couple of minutes. So we'll go straight into it.
Thank you, Your Worship. First item are minutes of the regular council meeting held Monday, March 1st, 2010. The recommendation is that council approve those minutes.
Second.
Moved by Councillor Asmundson, second by Councillor Robinson. All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Second item on the agenda are the minutes of the Land Use and Economic Development Standing Committee meeting held Monday, March 8th, 2010. And the recommendation is that those minutes be received.
Moved by Councillor Reamer, seconded by Councillor McDonnell. All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
The first item arising out of those minutes is in relation to the Westwood Golf and Country Club regarding the Metro Vancouver Regional Growth Strategy, and the recommendation is that, one, with respect to the draft RGS designation of the Westwood Golf and Country Club, that the motions 1A and 1B1, resolution number 027, as set out below of the January 18th, 2010 council meeting, be rescinded.
And I'm going to...
I'll just move to that.
Okay. Moved by Councillor Reamer. Second by Councillor Robinson. I'm going to ask our Land Use Committee Chair, we divide our work at City Hall into categories. Land Use is the committee that council that looks after, obviously, land use issues, and Councillor Reid will perhaps give an explanation as to how we got here. Councillor Reid.
Thank you. Well, it's been a long trip. One of the things that I've noticed with all the people that have been phoning and emailing and those that I've had the pleasure of speaking with, they're under, it's just total confusion out there. And so I sort of want to give you a basis for where we are so that you can sort of understand some of the processes. So as you listen to us all speak, hopefully it will make more sense. Two things. Tonight, if there's a Mr. Dillon in the audience, a lawyer belonging to your group, he and I had discussed both the Westwood Plateau Agreement and a current lawsuit, and I have reasons for judgment and a copy of the Westwood Plateau Agreement with me. So if he's here, hopefully he can see me after. I want to go back to 1996. In 1996, all the cities in British Columbia have the right to zone and plan their properties. It's just a given right to us from the province. In 1996, the Metro Vancouver, also known as the GVRD, decided that growth was imminent and coming quickly, and that what they needed was a regional plan so that they could look at where they were going to deliver services such as water and sewer and transportation services and all those things. So they set out to put in what we call the Livable Region Strategic Plan. It does not touch any of our zoning bylaws. All the zoning bylaws in the city are all intact and in place. They have not changed, nor will they change. They are there, and they don't move. They're immovable. That's what we deal with every day. They start with an OCP, an official community plan. They go to neighborhood plans. They go to different kinds of zoning, industrial, residential, various degrees of residential, parks, open spaces, all kinds of things. That is what our planners, our group of planners, do in our city. Metro Vancouver has an oversight now into all the cities in the lower region to see that they can deliver the core services that all the cities need efficiently. So when they put this Livable Region Strategic Plan in, they asked all the cities to take their maps and paint them green for green and gosh knows what, probably gray for industrial and whatever other color for residential, and send them down to Metro. They put all the pieces of the puzzle together and started looking at it and saying, well, gee, that's great. We can put the transit line here, and we've got a big range of industrial here, and highways can go here. It gave them an oversight of the whole Lower Mainland, and that's what it was for. Now, some cities didn't want to participate and didn't. Our city, if you were wearing green that day, you'd be in a green designation because they put everything we had green in it. And that's why we show up with probably more green spaces than anyone else. Where you sit today is we, your council, over the years, we're the ones that have provided the parks, the green spaces, not Metro Vancouver. There seems to be some confusion there. We provided them. We're the ones that put them in our neighborhood plans and all those other things. And I see Mrs. Brown here, and we're the one that got Metro or Walton Forest, and we are the ones this year that put Walton Forest in the green zone, not Metro. It's us. It's our planning staff and our environmental groups that do this. Then, after the plan was done, Metro announced how we will have to accept our share of growth, 169,000 in our city. That was back in 1996. Approximately 10 years later, sometime coming now, we all realized that the plan didn't work because it was too complicated, it was unwieldy, there was no consistency among the cities and the partners in the green zone, or green designation, I'm going to call it. Consequently, there were myriads of problems. I see former Mayor Wilson was sitting here. We sat through, I think, a 10-hour public hearing for one green zone thing, and people got stuff out of the green zone. It has to be movable because it wasn't done very efficiently. So in about 2006 and 2007, discussions began on doing the new Regional Growth Strategic Plan. They changed some names and some designations, but there's still no consistency on a variety of issues. All the major cities have big concerns. One city's response, one city only, had a 26-page long response as to why it wouldn't work. So this has ginormous problems. So why would we replace one plan that isn't working with another one that is supposed to last us for several decades that also won't work? So down to your concerns. You people from the Westwood Plateau seem to have been caught in the perfect storm. There's 4 factions that have seemed to have come into play in the last few months to bring you here. A pending election, the timing and scope of the negotiations with Metro Vancouver on the new plan, the sale of the golf course, and the environmental movement, who in all the cities are making noises and hoping that Metro will soon have control over all the green spaces, and hopefully that is going to provide them with easier access. Now that came from other cities, not me. Let's address them. Timing. We have been told that because of our new regional plan and the golf course sale, there's some nefarious things going on. Well, the regional plan started 3 to 4 years ago. The golf course sold in 2009, so I don't see how they could be connected. Who knew? I didn't know it was going to be sold. I got the information in the same way as you know. I do not know the owners, and I do not believe I have ever met them. But people started to link these two events and get out some sort of a gossip roll that kept rolling and rolling, and nobody knows why. Sometimes our environmentalists, and we have some great ones. I'll tell you, we have environmentalists here who can sway everybody. But sometimes we also have some environmentalists who are so passionate about their cause, and they are and they should be, but sometimes they quote things that aren't really quite correct, as we all do. But if it helps their cause, then it just furthers it on. Then we have the election. Everyone who's running here should be well informed. If not, go find out your information, get it. Because if you want to sit at this table, you should be able to have your information and know what you're talking about. What I want to ask you all is, where did you get your information? Because you need to go back and find out how this thing began. There has never been any plans to develop this golf course further than what it is now, a golf course. And I know, because I was on council, I know Councillor Sikora is going to speak to this later, we're the ones that negotiated it. We're the ones that got the public access on it. We're the ones that fought like heck back in the 1990s to get this for you. When you're looking in real estate, if you want to look for land that is going to benefit a city and benefit yourselves, you look at 4 things. The best places to buy land: waterfront, golf course, university, and view. Most of you have 2 out of the 4. I think you're in a pretty good stage. On January 11th, my first land use meeting as chair, staff put a motion forward. Now, I know staff's been beating their head against the wall with Metro Vancouver. And it was debated, was changed by Councillor Reamer, one little word to make it more certain, and it was passed, sent on to council, and also passed. It was to rescind, or it wasn't to rescind, it was to push the RGS through by moving some of our land designations, the ones you don't like. Why did we do that? To let Metro Vancouver know we are not going to accept them taking over our local planning authority. It isn't going to happen. The designation was to move land back to more city control. We have put all our green spaces in. We, not Metro Vancouver. Why should we give them more control? Who do you people think Metro Vancouver is? When I got some of the calls, which were pretty nasty and I won't repeat them, we were called bozos. So I'm going to use that lovable term. You only have 9, or you will have at the next election, bozos, if you want to refer us to that, here to deal with. At Metro Vancouver, you'll have 37 that you'll have to lobby. And of them, there's only 2 that really give a hoot and heck about Coquitlam, and that's the 2 that sit there. It was Mayor Wilson and myself. It was Mayor Stewart and myself last year, and this year it's Councillor Asmundson and Mayor Stewart. And we sit there and we work our butts off trying to do the best thing for the region and trying to do the best thing for the city. If you want to go on a weighted vote if something goes wrong down there, we have 6 votes out of 125. Not great odds, folks, not great odds. So when we go into this plan, we're going to go into it right and protect our interests. I'm not having Vancouver, Tsawwassen, Richmond, Delta, and Surrey planning our city because they sure as heck don't want me planning theirs. The proposed restrictions and regulations for land use strikes at the very heart of municipal autonomy. You do not achieve a working plan if all the cities feel this way, and some, like us, will want to move our lands out of metro control. The last plan in 1996 was a loose partnership of cities. Participation was not equal, but regulations were not nearly as strong as they are in this one. So I ask you now, let's imagine you're going to create this new regional plan. Let's say you could have a seagull's eye view of the whole lower mainland. Wouldn't you take a 30,000-foot look down over the region and try and put the proper designations into place? Should not all regional spaces be put in proper categories, not ones with real nifty names, but ones that make sense, that people looking at it can make sense out of? Now, I could go on for 3 hours, and I know you don't want me to, so I'm only going to deal with lands and the green designation lands, the ones we have to protect. This is what I think the plan should be changed to, and I am not alone. There are many people and planners in the cities that I have spoken to that think we should move here. There are some lands that you just don't touch. Those are agricultural lands and some rural lands, and they could be in one designation. The important ones and really big ones that we have a lot of in our city are conservation lands. I do not believe that conservation and recreation should be lumped together because they're 2 different and competing purposes. Conservation lands are drinking water, ecological conservation, major forests, wetlands, natural habitat, all our streamside and riparian areas. Perhaps we shouldn't even have trails in our riparian areas. I've always wondered about that, but that should be a conservation area. We should have regional recreation areas. That would include large regionally significant park spaces like Minnetonka, Colony Farm, Mundy Park, Forest Trails, our Deer Lake Park, our Stanley Parks, our Ambleside Parks. You can go right from one end of the spectrum to the other, from English Bay to Langley. All of those big parks should be recognized as regionally significant large recreation areas. Then we get to my pet project, which is golf courses. I happen to think, probably because of my business, that they're very significant. They're hugely regionally significant. They should have a special designation applied to them because they're all in different zonings. We have approximately 70 in the Lower Mainland, 73 or something like that. Some of them are in agricultural ALR, agricultural reserve. Some are in urban designations. Some are in half and half. Some are in even industrial zones. So I think that golf courses are so huge and so big and such an economic driver and so important to our green spaces that they need to have some kind of a designation that shows their significance with a group of rules that goes along with them that pertains only to golf courses. And I think that's incredibly important. We only have 2 in our city at this present time, and both of them are hugely important to us. Then we get down to our significant city green spaces. We, as a city, put thousands, millions of dollars into school fields. Blue Mountain Park, Town Centre parks, our little pocket parks, Mundy Parks, the active area, the Riverview and Walton Forest. They're not regional significance over the grand scheme of things, but they're majorly significant to us and our way of life and our quality of life. They need to have different protections, and they can by having a regional context statement, which is a statement that tells you all about the different zones, what their protection is, and how we go about protecting them. We have had no response from Metro on our last missive, and I didn't really expect one. I'm sure we won't soon, as they have not responded to anyone else either. What we did is let them know we are not interested in Metro usurping our authority for planning in our city. Lots of other cities are of the same mind. We do not need another level of government. We have more than enough government, nor can we afford Metro growing larger still to be duplicating what city planners are quite capable of doing. We created our green spaces, we created our city, not Metro, and we like our planners. We think they do an excellent job. Also, tucked away just in the middle of the regional growth strategy, this huge document, there's a little clause that they want a new plan or a reference to a tax sharing formula. You see, they're not another level of government. They don't have the right to tax. So they want us to share our taxes with them so they can hire more people, become a bigger organization, and get more government. Well, ain't going to happen from this girl. I would like this item to come back to land use and see if our next resolution can get legs with other cities and get resolved. In closing, you at this time are still in the 1996 green zone. Nothing has changed since 1996 and won't until a new plan is finalized through participation and sign-off by all the cities in the region. With all the angst in the other cities going on, I doubt it's going to be this year or maybe even next year. We've got to get our stuff together and figure out how we're going to do this properly. We have 2 voting members at Metro. If it becomes a weighted vote, as I said before, we're 6 out of 125. There's no sign-off on how the voting is going to be. You never go into a negotiation without knowing how you're going to get out or how you're going to change. That's a big thing for me. We've got to figure that out. One of our citizens sent me an email quoting all the flowery parts of the Metro Vancouver strategy, something like the vision to achieve what humanity aspires to be on a global basis, and how we will achieve this vision by embracing and applying the principles within the new RGS and all the other flowery statements. Well, from where I sit, great intentions, great and noble ideas, and I hope they come to fruition. But when you get into the substance of this document, it reminds me of those ads years ago selling sunny, beautiful lots in Florida. Lots of water and beaches. They forgot to tell you that it's really a swamp, and those things snapping in your backyard are alligators, not pets. Folks, it's very important and apparent that this whole process needs to go back to the drawing board. Our motion lets you know we are actively pursuing our changes not only for the green designation, but the rest of the plan as well. This whole process is very much a be careful what you wish for. If the Westwood Plateau Association would like to spend some time going more in depth in this situation as we go along, please let us know, and we can arrange you to come to meetings at Land Use and spend extra time with you so you can see how complicated it is. In the meantime, the only danger to your golf course is if I get on it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I know you're not a particularly avid golfer, so I'm not sure there's a great deal of risk there. Councillor Asmussen.
Thank you very much. Welcome, everybody. Nothing spreads faster than fear and those who use it to support their agendas. These are Council's negotiating points on the draft, and I underline draft, Metro Vancouver Regional Growth Strategy. Our staff and Metro Vancouver are in discussion on our points, and we're waiting, as Councillor Reid said, on a formal response to that. And we have floated the idea and told them that with all the different areas that golf courses are in right now, different categories, that would be advantageous for them to come back with another category, a golf course category. And the regional growth plan, as Councillor Reid said, is going to take at least a year or more before it comes to be voted upon. And when it does get passed, it's not a forever document. Another 10 to 15 years, it'll be reviewed, redone again, and that'll go on again. So this is not a document that's one day we're finishing the strategy and it's done. That's it forever. It's an evolving document that keeps evolving. The real issue for most local governments is they see that this is Metro Vancouver using the regional growth strategy as a way to grab more power. And as Councillor Reid showed, even taxation power that they don't have upon you. I guess just one thing, some examples I want to point out to you about Metro Vancouver controlling things. In the fall, we had Elaine Gold's Burke Mountain Naturalist came to the city of Coquitlam very concerned about Colony Farm Park plan, a new plan, going to the board to be voted on. This council wasn't aware of that. This council acquiesced and formed the Burke Mountain Naturalist and Elaine Gold's to ask Metro Vancouver to come and appear and then to delay passage of that new plan because they had concerns and there was not proper local input as they felt in that plan. The other issue that, to let you people know, is that the Metro Vancouver Parks Committee, we haven't had a rep put on that for 10 years. After Elaine Golds came and pointed out this issue, we requested on the new round of committee appointments for this year that Coquitlam be represented on the Metro Van Parks, because we have just not Colony Farm, but we have Minikata. And the mayor can correct me, but I think we even sent a letter to Metro Vancouver requesting
2 years
that.
in a row, though.
We didn't get put on, because we have no control over it. So we do not have a rep on that committee. So this plan will be back in front of the Metro Vancouver board. And it'll be a weighted vote, and we're going to have 6 votes out of 125 votes for a park that Metro Vancouver already does control in our city, where we have no direct input on it. Is this how you want Coquitlam concerns to be dealt with? I say no. You want your concerns about your issues, your parks, your city, dealt with here at the local level where you can deal with it. If you don't like what we're done, we're gone. You can't vote out the mayor in Burnaby, Abbotsford. That's what this is about. This is a big thing. About fear and people. We had the cold, wet weather map program. A small number of people created a tremendous amount of fear about a program and helping people. We had a public hearing in this council chambers till 3 a.m. Council, in their wisdom, voted to approve the cold wet weather mat program. None of the criticisms or fears that were raised by those people came true in that situation. It's been a good program, and it has dealt wonders for people in need. No one on this council, and I've told people that talk to me, supports development of the golf course. Our city markets the golf course as a jewel and a piece of our economic drivers in our city. It's very important to this city. I just don't understand how that fear has been permeated. Councillor Reid explained maybe some of the reasons for it, but this council and councils before have no desire. And I'm looking at you out here today, and we're talking about the fear of the golf course being developed. And we're talking about, again, I underline, a draft regional growth strategy proposal that we're sending our negotiating points back and forth. It's not a final document. And this is the concern that's here in this council chambers about the wording of a draft plan. Lord help me if a guy ever came to the city with a proposal, what would really happen with the people in that community? So I just don't ever think it's going to happen, okay? Because we're at a very small piece here, and you people are showing your concern. And I think some of you, and I'm not trying to override the point, but I think some of your fear is misplaced, such as the cold wet weather mat program. And this council has said time and time again, and people have said this, well, we know you are never going to develop this course. But the other process, you must understand that if this plan gets passed, we have 2 votes out of 37, we have 6 out of 125. The other cities could take all the green zone designations. We don't control the future of that plan. What I really believe is needed is a review of what is Metro Vancouver's core function. This is something Councillor Sikora has been barking about for years, about the growth of Metro Vancouver and the cost to you, the taxpayer. It was originally set up as by local governments, because this is a federation of local governments, is what Metro Vancouver is, as a regional utility for water, garbage, waste, and it has become way much more than that. And there's a large bureaucracy in there that wants to keep itself protected and growing in there. What this is about, and it's coming throughout all the cities in the region, this is about control of local issues, local governments, at the local level. And I do not want to give control of our local issues, where you guys have the direct ability to remove any one of us if we're not moving in the direction that you think the city has, to an ability where you don't have that control anymore. Once again, think about what Councillor Reid said. 2 out of 37, 6 out of 125 on a weighted vote. Those aren't good odds, folks. The good odds are here in this council chamber where this needs to be left. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And next person to push her button is Councillor Robinson.
Thank you. Well, this has certainly been a challenging few weeks. That has demonstrated to me some of the complications that arise when we engage in policy decisions that involve other planning or governing bodies, and when policy issues get muddied with process concerns. I think Councillor Reid actually spoke quite well about some of the challenges that we've certainly been facing. And I just want to speak for a minute to public process. There have been 12 regional opportunities for public input on this plan. There were meetings hosted by Metro in Port Moody and in Coquitlam earlier in January. We perhaps could have done a better job promoting these opportunities so that the public can see the relevance of these decisions in their lives, and I would like to suggest that perhaps we can talk with our communications department to look for ways to better promote these opportunities in a way so that residents can better understand some of these decision-making processes. For me, the issue before us is what constitutes good policy. I do believe that we ought to be making local land use decisions at the local level. I also believe that regional planning is a good thing for all of us because we don't just live in Coquitlam. We live in Coquitlam in relation to other communities. And I would like to believe that we all want to live in a region that protects and promotes our quality of life. The criteria or guiding principles that I've used in making my decision are related to regional significance and consistency. So in terms of regional significance, when the recommendations came before us, I thought that there really wasn't a whole lot of regional significance to these areas because our official community plan sort of was taking care of them. That was going to be our guide for local decision making. In hindsight, I regret that I didn't ask actually for a detailed map of the proposed changes at the time, and I want to thank those of you who have raised the alarm bells, because what it did was it forced me to go back and ask for some of those detailed maps. And it's like being on Google Map. When you zoom out, it actually looks different at the 30,000 foot level. You get a better view of what these changes actually mean for the region. And I'm actually quite disappointed that Metro Vancouver did not take the initiative to have these detailed maps available to the public when they conducted their public input sessions. And for those of us like me who are directionally challenged, I need pictures and maps to help me envision some of these plans. Do we have these maps for the overhead?
No, I've got that. Which one do you want?
Can we put them up there?
Which one, the current map?
Well, can we do the February 29th, the February 2009 one first? Okay, so this was the February 2009. This is where things were at. And I want to draw your attention to the north-south corridors that you see in Coquitlam. Can you show people where Coquitlam is? Can we have staff sort of show folks? Does everyone know where Coquitlam is?
Most of that, but...
Do we have a pointer?
Come on.
Does this have a laser?
Oh, no, it doesn't have a...
There, you can see the little cursor there. Town boundary. Back with Port Moody, across to Burnaby, down to the river. Colony Farms, this green area here, Coquitlam River, the boundary with Port Coquitlam, up Westwood, and then northeast Coquitlam is this area up here. Is that helpful?
Yes, that's very helpful. So for me, this was sort of where things were at with the original draft. There are various features here when you zoom out that, to me, demonstrate the kind of regional significance that we have. You can see where the golf courses are. You can see where the north-south corridors that protect green spaces, riparian areas. They protect our land values and our quality of life. It's one of the reasons why I decided to make Coquitlam my home, and I suspect it's why many of you decided to make Coquitlam your home as well. I also want to point out, if you take a look over at Port Moody, can I get your help again, Rob? At the north end of Port Moody, right there. Nope, over a little bit.
Northeast.
Yeah, right there.
Right there.
There's a discontinuous green space. Can we go to the next draft? The November one?
Oh, no, sorry. That's the same one.
There we go. So if you go back to the Port Moody one, where you were, they've actually added in their recommendation to make the corridor connection. If you take a look over at our northeast sector, those north-south corridors don't exist. If you take a look at our southwest, lots of stuff has been taken out that would signify where there were at least some potential corridors. And can you go over to Coquitlam River? The north part of Coquitlam River, all the way north. That piece as well, below that, where there's the missing connection. Yeah. So that's been removed, as well as numerous others. I've circled them on my map, and So those were the things that sort of caught my attention, was that the maps look actually substantially different than I thought they would look when I made my decision. Thank you, Rob. Which brings me to my next guiding principle, which is consistency, which I think is a good principle to consider when making these decisions. And I went to our OCP to see if we were being consistent with our own plans that have already received public support. Are we consistent with it? So section 1.3.2 speaks to the support of regional goals. Protection of the green zone speaks to how we will protect these areas, and then further, in quotes, reaffirms our commitment to protecting the green zone and exploring opportunities to preserve additional environmentally sensitive areas that have been identified through a balanced and fair approach. And further down in this document, it says that we will develop a responsive, appropriately balanced system of parks, open spaces, pathways, and waterway corridors throughout the city. Now, I do believe that we're doing that, but it's really hard when we've made these recommendations and we see on the map that we can't see them as clearly. So that has raised some concerns for me as well. I think we need to also consider the risks if we continue down this path. Theoretically, the lands that are in question are protected by our existing official community plan. But in time, we will be required to review this plan and discover that our OCP is not consistent with our regional designations. And so in the name of consistency, some future council could decide to change the OCP to fit with our regional designations. And that can have some real impact on our quality of life. Finally, late last week, I checked with Metro to find out really how the golf courses across the region were being designated. I thought that part of the recommendation before us was to seek consistency across the region. I learned that there is no consistency for golf courses, and when I asked the staff at Metro how this came to be, I was told that this was left to each municipality to decide what is regionally significant. So this is where, I completely agree with sort of what's been said, because the process is completely flawed. For me, this was the deal breaker. It suggests that we've been engaging in a flawed process, and the flawed process has to do with Metro. There is no consistency, and there are no guiding principles, from what I can tell, that are being used consistently across the region to make these determinations about what has regional significance. So how can we as a municipality engage in a regional planning process that has inconsistent planning principles? And this, to me, is not regional planning. So I'm all for local land use decisions made at the local level when we have properly identified regionally significant lands in a meaningful and consistent manner. But I don't believe that we're there yet, and I'm actually not comfortable supporting any part of any decision that is based on a flawed process. And for this reason, I would actually like to amend this motion to include rescinding the removal of the various water courses, riparian and environmental areas in the southwest and northwest Coquitlam, and city-owned active parks from the conservation recreation. In other words, rescind the entire decision that we actually had made. And that this be sent back to land use for further analysis. I'm just really not comfortable making a decision based on a flawed process. I think that's a real problem. So I'm really hoping that I can get a seconder and that we can have a discussion about just stepping backwards from all of this and going back to land use so that we can figure out what next steps ought to be.
Okay. I'm a bit surprised, at least one of you knows that that's not permitted. There actually are rules related to the conduct in the chamber, and I would appreciate it if there aren't any outbursts or applause or boos or any of that sort of thing. But I do appreciate that most of you weren't aware of that. There's a little bit of, I'm not sure which one. I think the motion was to rescind more and then send it back to, is it one, or are you both, do both? Rescind more and then send it back. Okay. That's the motion. Okay. Is there a seconder? Okay. There's no seconder on that one. I think it's partly because there was sort of an indication earlier that maybe the whole thing ought to go back to land use to be considered there. That actually is the place where you do the committee's work and then council ratifies a committee's recommendation.
Let's just send it back.
So, well, right now we've got the existing motion on the floor, and I see Councillor McDonnell is on the list.
Thank you. One of the jobs that we do in Coquitlam Council is we plan for green zones, riparian areas, parks, and other recreation areas. Metro Vancouver doesn't do that. Coquitlam City Council does. In the early 90s, Coquitlam Council, under then Mayor Lusacora, along with the province and Westbuild, negotiated the golf courses on Westwood Plateau. Council ensured that a restricted covenant was placed on the golf courses, ensuring they stay in place and remain accessible to the public. In the regional growth strategy, Coquitlam has agreed to take on more density, aiming for a population of around 200,000 people by 2031. Part of the city's strategy in attracting this population growth is to take advantage of our amenities and all our natural beauty that convinces people that Coquitlam is the place to live. Our 2 golf courses on Westwood Plateau play a large part in attracting people to Coquitlam. We're counting on the golf courses to be a draw to Coquitlam and for them to be a reason to stay in Coquitlam. These golf courses are too important to Coquitlam ever to be tampered with. This regional growth strategy update was initiated by the staff at Metro Vancouver, not Coquitlam. Negotiations with the cities in the Lower Mainland began in 2006 and will likely continue for several more years. It's optimistic, I believe, to think that they're going to be done in a year. I can't promise you that any of the changes that we suggest or the wording changes will be the same in 6 months from now or even a month from now. This is an ongoing negotiation, and as any negotiation goes, it will undergo a lot of changes before any consensus is agreed upon. And unfortunately, there are people and groups in Coquitlam with a vested interest in seeing this issue become disruptive. As unsettling as it is, I believe it's very important to this city and its future to be very careful in our dealings with Metro Vancouver. And we've got a long-held tradition in Coquitlam adding green space amenities, not taking them away. In adding all the green spaces from pocket parks, protected forests, riparian zones, sports fields, trails, and golf courses, we need to categorize them better so that when Metro Vancouver and the cities in the Lower Mainland talk about their amenities, we're all on the same page. Even though I realize the wording will change numerous times, I will suggest the strategy return to the Land Use Committee for wordsmithing on the categories. And I'll be willing to make that motion when this discussion is over. I can't support backing out of negotiations with Metro Vancouver over land use designations because it would be a huge disservice to our residents. What I can promise is that I've heard you loud and clear, and the wording for the green zone designations must be better. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Sikora.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Well, there's been a lot said tonight. I was at that meeting when there was about 325 residents in there, and certainly you could see a lot of frustration in there, and a lot of people that are thoroughly upset and really had a fairly good reason to be upset. However, here's the situation. That had a couple of weeks ago or so that the resolution be passed, or would have been defeated, might have been a little different story, but not that much, because it would have been still a beginning. Beginning is something that is going to be carried on, but at least the residents probably would have been a little more comfortable if that resolution would have been defeated a couple of weeks ago, but it wasn't. But the situation is, when I was there, I heard things like, well, if the golf course goes broke, or, the developer may buy and start developing it. Not so. It's got a mortgage on it. Whether it be Westbuild holds the mortgage or whether it be the bank, they would sell it for a golf course. It certainly wouldn't be, and that housing somehow would go up there. There's just no way. Or the clubhouse would be given to Coquitlam as a community center. Well, I'm going to tell you something. That's about the worst clubhouse you'd ever have in your life for any city to even have or even look at. All our parks in the city, and I'm going to say this, most of them, I think maybe 100% of them are now dedicated parks. And I'd ask Councillor Reid, as a land use chairman, that she takes over and looks at the parks that are not dedicated, bring it back to the Land Use Committee, and let's dedicate all our parks that are not dedicated. Dedicated parks must go through a referendum of the public. the voters in our community to undedicate. And that I have not, in my 37 years, I've never seen one park that has ever been developed. So I don't think that that's a case, as Council Reid and Council Anderson said, that fact is the golf courses in different cities are different categories. That's wrong. The Land Use Committee should take over and make sure that all the golf courses are in the same category, whatever it is, to be protected forever and a day. And the Westwood residents must be protected. They bought land, buildings or houses, lots, and build houses on a golf course, and that should always be so. What right would I have to take your livelihood away or your style of living? I can't believe that anybody, matter of fact, I know nobody around these council chambers would do it. And I remember the day I was the mayor then, when Mundy Park, there was a few people pushing for it to become a golf course. I went to my council members, and the council members backed me that we will not put a golf course in there, and there will not be a referendum for a golf course in Mundy Park. What would have happened then? It would have split the community 50-50. It would have split the community like you've never seen before, which we did not need. So that failed. And the fact is, Mundy Park is where it is. I chaired the Parks Recreation of the GVRD when Colony Farms was put into park. I chaired the GVRD Parks when Riverview Forest came aboard. I chaired the Riverview, the Parks Recreation Committee when Widgeon Valley became a park. And many, many other, and parks in Richmond, and a few other things. So those things did happen. But see, what happens here is the fact is that you take it back, and I think Mayor Stewart sits on this committee that deals with these, with this kind of plan that's being brought forward with the mayors.
Yep.
Okay? Well, to me, it bothers me. It bothers me a great deal. What is it going to be? We don't even know that if this community plan map comes aboard, it's going to be 50% of the votes plus one that's going to change. I don't know. They haven't decided yet. Is it going to be 2/3 majority of the GVRD? I don't know. It's not put into place. Is it going to be 75%? No, I don't know. It's never been put in place. There's many, many things that must happen in here. And we as a city, and I understand that there's quite a few other cities that are very upset with Metro Vancouver. To me, I've said this before, I sat on a board from 1970 odd at the GVRD, and I've always said that we should collapse Metro Vancouver and rebuild it. It's worn out its use in the community. It's taken over more power and more power and more power. And I see where they also, not only that, with this community plan map, they want money from each city to pay for employees. They're going to build another empire, another fourth level of bloody government, a non-elected body. You people didn't put these people in there. They self-appointed themselves. How bad is that? So, and I've always been that way. I remember sitting on a GVRD board where the board was elected by the taxpayers of your community. You ran for mayor or council member, you ran for the GVRD board. The taxpayers of this community said yes or no. You will sit on it or you will not. Elected body. You got the same thing in transit. Non-elected body. And goes on and on and on and on. So, to me, it's very simple. I think the easiest and best way to protect everybody in these council chambers that own a home on the Westwood Plateau, and take it from me, I've been around for 37 years, I think very, very simple. That I go back to Land Use Committee and let the Land Use Committee have a body from the Westwood Plateau people sit with our Land Use Committee and deal together. What is it that you would like to see happening as far as your protection forever and a day, or as long as you possibly can? And I know that the community plan maps change. A few other things change every few years, or they're at least revisited. But I think that's the only way that this can be put to bed forever and a day. Because as it is right now, it will not. What will happen, say, in a couple of weeks' time when we pass this resolution, or 2 months from now, or 3 months from now, some ugly head come up and bite you again. You don't need that. You need to come to the Land Use Committee, work together, and the Land Use Committee, people working with the Metro Vancouver, because this is not end-all, be-all. Today doesn't resolve anything. It's the future that we must look forward. And we must work with the people from Westwood Plateau to make sure that you're protected and that the golf course is for an everyday golf course. And I know, as I was the mayor then, when we carved out the Westwood Plateau, they wanted to have a private golf course. I said, no, it'll be a public golf course. And the fact is that the Coquitlam people have 5 days to book ahead of everybody else for tea time. And it's still in there. There's about 46 restricted covenants in the Land Use Committee on land use in New Westminster, registered covenant. So you can look at that covenant and see what's been registered, what hasn't been registered. There's a very, very good protection for the people of Westwood Plateau. And with that, Mayor, I would move that we have the Land Use Committee take over this and deal with the Westwood Plateau people in Metro Vancouver.
Okay, the motion is to refer it back to the Land Use Committee.
Yes.
Thank you. I'm going to finish the speaking list only because there's 2 people left. And I'm one of them. I want to say, first of all, I'm actually pleased that so many people have an interest in this issue, although I'm quite dismayed that many of you are here because you've received inaccurate information. And I know that other councillors have spoken about that. The good part, though, is that you're here. So let's address it. First of all, I want to address a meeting that took place a couple of weeks ago. When I received the invitation from Mr. Cox of the Westwood Plateau Residents Association, I'll tell you right now, I immediately returned the call and said, I'm sorry, I'm booked most of February and most nights, for that matter, in March, and I wouldn't be able to attend the meeting. I advised them of the way that these meetings are normally established, because most other members of council have the same sorts of busy schedules. There are always meetings. Most evenings there's a meeting that we can go to, and in many cases we've made commitments. I let them know the best way to organize this kind of meeting is to contact City Hall and try to work out a date when most of us were free. And this is the way most of the meetings end up on my schedule. I let Mr. Cox know that it generally wouldn't be fair for a member of council to cancel a previously scheduled event or meeting with a group that had called ahead to check availability, because another group had called a meeting and hadn't checked availability. And I've heard from several people here that were at the meeting that it seems that information wasn't entirely made clear. So I wanted to make sure it was made clear tonight. Mr. Cox has since acknowledged that he probably should have set that up differently, and I agree. It's just, and I certainly understand the concerns expressed by residents who have been many sleepless nights over this issue, an issue on which there's been a tremendous amount of misinformation. Councillor Asmundson mentioned that the plan will be back to the Metro Vancouver Board. Well, there's actually several steps before that. First, it'll go to the Regional Planning Committee. And this year, actually, I've been named the chair of the Regional Planning Committee. This is and if you want to talk about a flawed process, I'm discovering even in greater detail the flaws in this process that other council members have talked about. The Regional Planning Committee, Metro Vancouver, has a big task ahead of it, because Metro Vancouver wants to adopt a regional growth strategy that I don't think actually will get adopted. I don't think at this point it can get adopted. I've been to several of the public meetings that Metro Vancouver has held on this subject, and I think that we're really not delving into the issues associated with this. I've spoken to several mayors at the last meeting of the Metro Vancouver Regional Planning Committee, the first one I've been to as vice chair, and it was clear to me that a great many mayors, a great many council members across the region are getting more and more concerned with this enormous bite that Metro Vancouver is attempting, particularly related to the tax implications. The Metro Vancouver Parks Committee was referred to as one issue. For example, we still aren't on the Metro Vancouver Parks Committee. We don't have a voice on it, and yet the largest proposed park redevelopment that's before the committee is in Coquitlam, the Colony Farm. And even though we managed to get them to back off last fall, we still haven't got membership on the committee. We still don't have a voice on that committee. And I think those kinds of challenges that Metro Vancouver is putting before the people of Metro Vancouver are making a lot of people distrust them. And so I've got those concerns. Every member of council tonight has outlined concerns they have with a process that is moving forward very slowly, and we're on a draft. This is a draft. This hasn't, as Councillor Reid said very eloquently, this doesn't change anything up there unless it goes through a whole bunch of steps. Tonight you've heard very diverse comments from members of council. It's not so much that we're divided, but we have different opinions perhaps on how best to proceed to make sure we're standing up for the residents of Coquitlam. I believe the principle of consistency, personally I believe that the principle of consistency is less important than reducing the anxiety, and that's why I supported the motion at the committee level. But I certainly understand those members of council who have other concerns related to this process. In any case, I do want to assure you that the council and the city would never entertain the development of the Westwood Plateau Golf Course. There are enormous, and I would suggest, I believe, insurmountable barriers to any kind of proposal like that. And I haven't heard anyone connected with this site ever even suggest that it's a remote possibility. But I understand, though, the concerns that people in the room have, and I'm glad that council members have been able to express in great detail their own concerns related to this. There was one other council member, Councillor Reamer.
Thank you very much. Well, I completely agree with my colleagues with respect to the flawed process, Metro Vancouver, and the difficulties we've had with that. The fact that golf courses all over the Lower Mainland are designated differently is just a perfect example of the work that needs to continue to be done on this draft. I don't believe this draft is going to be passed, and when you consider that and consider the upset to our community and the needless anxiety, it's so unfortunate. With respect to the Westwood Golf and Country Club, it's currently under the Livable Region Strategy Plan designated green, and so it is currently receiving protection and has since its inception. I made this motion at land use meeting originally because I felt that the needless anxiety felt by our community was, well, let me put that a different way, that the change in designation and for consistency reasons was not worth, or it did not justify the needless anxiety or upset to our community. And I still feel that way. But there is work that needs to be done on these designations. We need to come up with different designations. We really have very little to choose from. We have industrial, we have agricultural, conservation, recreation, commercial, and general urban. That's not a huge amount of choice that we have. And so I really think when it comes to extensive recreation or golf courses, that we need to be looking at some different designations. And so we certainly do need to continue on our work with Metro Vancouver to try and come up with those new designations. I would never ever support the development of the Westwood Golf and Country Club, neither would my colleagues. And you have to believe that in 20 years' time or 40 years' time, when I'm no longer here, that the council of the day would probably be
stupid to support something like that. And so even though you're saying that, well, we can't speak for future councils, I just know how you've all felt and how upset you've all been, and I would imagine that that's going to be the same in 20 years if these discussions ever took place at that time. So all in all, that is why I made my motion at the land use meeting. I do agree that more work needs to be done, and so sending it back to land use committee is certainly a viable alternative. Thank you.
Okay, the motion is to refer the recommendation back to land use committee to work with. Any further discussions? Saying there was a motion. It was moved and seconded. You moved the recommendations. Okay, you moved recommendation 1, and the motion to amend was to, well, the motion to refer was for the entire motion, so recommendation 1 would be referred back to land use committee. We can have a subsequent motion after that to refer the other ones if you wish, but right now we can only, the motion to refer can only deal with the motion that's on the floor. The motion that was on the floor was recommendation 1. No, we'll just go forward. The recommendation 1 would be referred back to land use committee if this passes, and it sounds like it will. We can then refer the other recommendations back to land use committee if you like. Okay? So the motion on the floor is to refer. Okay. Madam Clerk.
Councillor Reamer moved the first recommendation, which is to rescind 1A and 1B1 of resolution number 027. The next two items, the two parts of the recommendation, weren't moved. So right now the motion on the floor is to refer part 1 of this recommendation to the Land Use and Economic Development Standing Committee.
Exactly. So Councillor Reamer moved recommendation number 1. You moved to refer that recommendation back to the Land Use Committee.
Yeah.
That's been second. Yeah. That referral has been.
If you'd allow me to say a couple of words, Mayor, is the situation is this, that Councillor Reamer's motion is on the floor. So we have to vote on that one first, and then you vote on my referral back to land use as I.
No. Please. The motion to refer takes precedence. You've moved the motion to refer a motion that's legitimately on the floor. The motion to refer takes precedence.
That's correct. The motion to refer takes precedence.
So the motion that Councillor Reamer made, it dies. Is that what you're saying?
No, you've moved to refer the motion back to the Land Use Committee. So the motion would be referred back to the Land Use Committee.
Yes.
Yes, that's what you moved.
But it's not what it says here in A and B.
No, there's a legitimate motion on the floor,
yes.
And now there's a motion to refer that back to the Land Use Committee, and that was seconded as well.
I'll settle for that one, but okay, I'll withdraw the motion for the time being.
Okay, well, we won't be able to refer it back to.
No, I'll just, Mayor...
Okay, there's a motion to refer. This matter will go back to the Land Use Committee, as I thought was intended, and the Land Use Committee can then review it. Is that
That's correct.
Thank you very much.
So the motion wouldn't pass. It would be referred back to the Land Use Committee for further consideration.
You're comfortable with that, Councillor Sikora?
Fine.
Okay. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of referral? All opposed? Councillor Robinson and Councillor Reamer are opposed. The motion carries. That matter will be back to Land Use Committee. Are there any other motions related to this item? There's two. Councillor Reid moves recommendation 2 and 3 from the Land Use Committee, seconded by Councillor Asmundson. These are the ones related to public consultation and Metro Vancouver.
Just for clarification, we're referring them back to the Land Use Committee.
Oh, she just moved them.
She's just moving them.
Okay, so they'd be moved. Okay. Moved by Councillor Reid, seconded by Councillor Rasmussen. Is there any discussion on that? Councillor Score? No? Okay. Councillor Reader?
I'm just wondering if we should read those two motions so that the gallery here, oh, they're on the screen. Okay, great.
I'd be happy to read them if that's council's preference.
We're good. Okay. So those two motions are before us. Staff are directed to work with Metro Vancouver and then a public consultation process. Seeing no more discussion, all in favor of that? Opposed? That passes unanimously. Thank you. Next item, please.
So, I don't understand what just happened. Wasn't there supposed to be
Excuse
a
me,
vote on rescinding something? I mean, there's a lot of change
Excuse
of
me,
language
excuse me,
going
sir.
on, and I'm completely
Okay.
lost now. Did we just
Sir.
miss the first point?
Sir, there was a motion to refer the first item back to the Land Use Committee to be dealt with there and to be worked, and that motion included some reference to working with the Community Association on trying to identify the challenges and the topics and solutions that can be brought forward. That motion to refer passed, and so the item will now be sent back to Land Use Committee for consideration there.
Wasn't there a vote on rescinding some previous change of zoning?
Excuse me. We actually just can't shout out like that. But this is how it will work. This is how it will work. I will explain it. This is how it will work. There is a motion that was made by the Land Use Committee and passed there and sent here for ratification. Council opted not to ratify it, but opted to send it back to the Land Use Committee with some other comments related to it. And Land Use Committee will receive the motion, and next week we'll be working on that. And Councillor Reid, as the chair of the Land Use Committee, will identify a process, I suspect, to dialogue with the association on how to find a better solution to this. And I suspect it will include going back to Metro Vancouver on finding some appropriate designations so that you don't have to call golf courses either conservation lands or urban lands. That's probably what's going to come out of it. And that process, Council just voted on that. It will now be referred back to the Land Use Committee. So, Councillor Reid, did you have any further comments related to that? No? No? Okay. Thank you very much. So it will be dealt with next week at the Land Use Committee. We're actually not. This council expressed a lot of opinions related to this, and the Land Use Committee will address them. But okay, I'm sorry about that. But what council has done today is refer the matter back to the Land Use Committee. Okay, Ms. Clerk.
Item 2.2 on the agenda is the proposed road cancellation adjacent to 1400 Lougheed Highway, bylaw number 4103-2010. The recommendation is that council give first, second, and third readings.
Okay, we're going to take a short
recess.
pause here. I didn't move the motions.
A lot of requests to appear as delegated.
get going again. Reconvene. Moved by Councillor McDonnell, seconded by Councillor Robinson. Any discussion on the item? All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Item 2.3 is the authorization of development variance permit 10006304DV for reduction of interior and exterior side yard setbacks for proposed new house at 223 Jackson Street. The recommendation is that Council approve the signing and sealing of development variance permit 10006304DV, and the Mayor and City Clerk be authorized to execute this permit on behalf of the City of Coquitlam.
Before we move that, this is a development variance permit, which requires me to call for speakers on this item, if there are any in the audience. So for the first time, are there any speakers to this item? Second time, are there any speakers to this item?
I just had a question about the specifics.
Go ahead.
I'm a neighbor of this.
Okay, please step forward. You'll have to give your name and address for the record. We're going to... We can't. Go ahead.
Move the mic
Thank
up.
you. Jason Easton, 220 Jackson Street.
Yep.
I just had a question about what the actual specific differences between the current setbacks and what the proposed setbacks would be.
I'm going to turn to our Planet Director, General Manager of Planning, Mr. McIntyre.
Thank you, Worship. There are a series of setback variances being requested. And if I just have to read from the report here, the exterior side setback line would go from 3.8 meters to 3 meters, so a 0.8 meter, 2.5 feet.
Yep.
The minimum required side yard would go from 1.8 to 1.25 meters, so about 6.5, 7 feet down to 4.5 feet, 5 feet. The reduced exterior side lot line on the other one, 3.8 to 3.0, as I said. And the on the one lot, proposed lot B, the interior north side line would go from 1.8 down to 0.9 meters. So that would be the one.
The north side?
Yeah.
Okay, that would be facing the Henderson Avenue then, correct?
And then the on the south side, the south interior side lot line, we'd be going from 1.8 meters down to 1.25 meters. And then lastly, on the other north side lot line would be going from 1.2 meters down to 0.9 meters.
Okay.
And this, Your Worship, this would relate to the two lots, the property boundary being shifted somewhat to give them more equal size as opposed to one very narrow lot right now.
Do that. The intent of this is to equalize. There currently is a property line that the builder could build to, but it would require a very narrow house, where the application is to somewhat equalize those properties to allow two somewhat equal houses, notwithstanding the fact that the owner of the property could in fact build two houses already. So this is to reflect that.
Okay. Is this zoned for a duplex?
This is it's Mr. McIntyre. Is it zoned for a duplex?
That's correct, Your Worship. It's the RT1 zone. These parcel sizes, though, are not sufficient to allow for the construction of a duplex.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
I had a question.
Councillor Reid.
I had asked for more extensive consultation on this. Did we get anybody else coming forward? We have this one gentleman, but is there anybody else that came forward on this?
Your Worship, to my knowledge, we didn't receive any other letters or emails or phone calls.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. second time. Are there any further speakers to this item? I'm going to pause there for a moment. Staff are going to, in about 2 minutes, have the rear wall back in place.
Good heavens. This was a mistake. Oh, this was a mistake what we did tonight. We should have. Huge, huge, huge mistake.
One of the challenges is the camera plugs in.
Okay.
Just going to let our cameraman give me a thumbs up before we get going again. Okay. I, on behalf of Council, want to applaud the people who designed this Council chambers as being imminently expandable, but also having a back wall for moments like this. So thank you very much. I'm going to start over again. First time, is there any further speakers to this item? Second time, are there any further speakers to this item? Third and final time, are there any further speakers to this item? I declare the public hearing element of the this item closed. Madam Clerk.
So the item is that Council approve the signing and sealing of Development Variance Permit 10006304DV, and the Mayor and City Clerk be authorized to execute this permit on behalf of the City of Coquitlam.
Moved by Councillor Sikora, seconded by Councillor Reamer. Councillor Reid.
Sorry. Oh, my fault.
Oh, okay, no problem. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 2.4 is zoning bylaw text amendment to the RM2, RM3 apartment zones, RT2 townhouse zone, and definitions in bylaw, for bylaw number 4106-2010. The recommendations are: 1, that Council give first reading to City of Coquitlam zoning amendment bylaw number 4106-2010, that bylaw number 4106-2010 and application 09009560RZ be referred to public hearing. And 3, in addition to the regular public hearing notification, request staff to notify the following organizations: Urban Development Institute, Canadian Home Builders Association, single-family home builders adjacent to multifamily sites, multifamily development permit applicants in 2008 and 2009, and community and neighborhood associations.
Moved by Councillor Aspenson, second by Councillor Robinson. In discussion, all in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 3 are minutes of the Engineering, Utilities and Environment Standing Committee meeting held Monday, March 8th, 2010. The recommendation is that Council receive those minutes.
Moved by Councillor Robinson, second by Councillor Reamer. All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Item 4 are minutes of the Recreation, Sports and Culture Standing Committee meeting held Monday, March 8th, 2010, and the recommendation is that Council receive those minutes.
Moved by Councillor Reamer, second by Councillor Robinson. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
The first item arising out of those minutes is in relation to Sport Council, and the recommendation is that Council, 1, approve the formation of a Sport Council based on the terms of reference and timelines for the implementation of a Sport Council as outlined in the staff report. 2, appoint the Chair and Vice Chair of the Recreation, Sports and Culture Standing Committee as the Chair and Vice Chair of the Sport Council. And 3, direct staff to bring forward a request for $20,000 as part of the 2011 operating budget submission to cover staff costs necessary to support the Sport Council. And I just want to note here that I believe one of the recommendations has been left off the slide, which is that Council appoint the members of the Recreation, Sport and Culture Standing Committee to the Sport Council.
Move recommendation.
Moved by Councillor McDonnell, second by Councillor Reamer. Councillor Robinson.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions, and I guess this comes from the usual place that I come from is sort of what are some of the indicators that this is a successful model for paying attention to the sports community, and is there a plan in place to, after a year or so, I'm not quite sure when, to engage the stakeholders, the 50 some odd stakeholders, to see that, that this has been a good model for them, that it's achieving the goals that it's setting out? Is there a plan for that?
Through the chair.
Ms. McKay.
Through the chair.
Microphone, please.
Thanks for your question.
I'll get the wireless mic.
Indeed.
Thank you. Yes, thank you for your question. Through the chair, all of the standing committees of council undergo an annual or term review, and this new sports council would be consistent with that. These reviews are reported out to council either each year or at the end of the term of the committee, and the evaluation includes how successful the committee was in processing their work plan, their meeting schedule, any projects that they undertook, as well as the overall experience of committee members. So we anticipate that this advisory committee will be reviewed in that same context. Additionally, because this is a new initiative, we would like to work collaboratively with the committee members themselves, as well as staff that will be working with this committee, to establish criteria in addition to the review that is done through the Clerk's Department. And as the Sports Council will be working very closely with all of the sport groups, we expect that that collaborative process can also involve those stakeholder groups.
Great, thank you. I have one other question, and that just, they did, I think, a pretty decent article in the local paper about it, and had some question about if there's something in the hopper for arts, culture, and heritage sort of groups. They also serve a huge number of residents. The library alone, I think, is 12,000, and wanting to know if this might be a sort of a model for that part of the community as well. If that's some of the thinking, maybe you can enlighten us a little bit about what's coming up there.
Yes, Your Worship. Work is progressing on the Cultural Services Draft Strategic Plan, consistent with Council's approval. We are currently at the public consultation stage, and meetings are occurring in the month of March. There was one last week, and I believe there's one coming up this week as well. In addition, the draft report on the Cultural Services Plan and a survey is going to be up on the city website this week. So certainly citizens are getting very involved in the development of the Cultural Strategic Plan. And we expect that that feedback will be coming back to Council in the spring when staff will be reporting back, and it will include recommendations on moving forward with a cultural services plan, and we very much expect that that will likely include a recommendation around the creation of a cultural advisory council, similar to the Sport Council.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor McDonnell.
Thank you. Well, this is a really exciting initiative, and we've got 16,000 people in Coquitlam who play organized sports, twice that many that use our recreational facilities. We've got over 50 sports groups in the city, and it wasn't that long ago that we couldn't get 3 or 4 of these groups to sit in the same room. When the Coquitlam Field Sport Association was formed, it managed to get all the field sports to sit at one table under one roof. An amazing feat in itself. And now the Poirier Ice Arena has a group up there that looks after all the ice and dry floor sports. This is just the next natural progression. The intent of this group is to be a working group, not one that's going to sit and listen to submissions and plans and just hear what the city would like to do. This is going to be a working group that actually rolls up its sleeves and gets down and tells us what the city needs from a facility standpoint, how the city needs to interact with our user groups. And of course, at the end of this, advise us accordingly. I think this is a great initiative. I think that it speaks to our Parks and Recreation Department and how far we've come in dealing with our user groups and responding to their needs. I think that Coquitlam will be showing the way to the rest of the communities, our neighboring communities, on how to work with our residents. So I'm very pleased with this initiative, and I look forward to a great success.
Thank you. Councillor Reamer.
Thank you very much. I just want to thank staff for coming up with this. I think it's a fabulous initiative. I agree with everything Councillor McDonnell has said. I also like the fact I had the pleasure of attending an ice and dry floor user meeting last week, actually, and I think the representation that we've got in our terms of reference, 3, 3, and 3, is a perfect number for a good working group. I also like the fact that our council members will not have a vote on that particular group, and that it will be directed by the users themselves. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, and I'll make a couple of comments myself. Correct one thing. This actually isn't so much a staff initiative as I want to applaud Councillor McDonnell, whose initiative brought this up and raised the issue. And I think that anytime you can get groups together, working together to a common goal, it makes a whole lot more sense than what has happened in the past, and we certainly appreciate it. Thank you, Councillor McDonnell. Any other speakers? Seeing none. All in favor? Opposed? Your motion carries unanimously.
Item 4.5 is the Canada Day Program Plan. The recommendation is that Council approve the grant submissions to the Department of Canadian Heritage for the celebration and commemoration program as outlined in the staff report.
Second.
Moved by Councillor Reamer, seconded by Councillor Robinson. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Forward to Canada Day.
Item 4.8 is Union of British Columbia Municipalities Age-Friendly Community Planning and Project Grant. The recommendation is that Council support the UBCM Age-Friendly Planning and Project Program Grant application.
Moved by Councillor Robinson, second by Councillor McDonnell. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 5 is fourth and final reading of Emergency Program Bylaw number 4092-2010. The recommendation is that Council give consideration to fourth and final reading of Emergency Program Bylaw number 4092-2010.
Second.
Moved by Councillor Reamer, second by Councillor Robinson. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 6 is report of General Manager Corporate Services related to the City of Coquitlam 2010 Local Improvement Parcel Tax Review Panel. The recommendation is that Council approve the first sitting of the annual Parcel Tax Review Panel on Wednesday, April 7th, 2010 at 4 p.m. in the City Council chambers, and 2, approve that, if necessary, the second sitting of the Parcel Tax Review Panel be on Thursday, April 8th, 2010 at 4 p.m. in the City Council chambers.
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Robinson, second by Councillor Reamer. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 7 is report of the City Clerk. It's in relation to an application for a permanent change to a liquor primary license for a structural change, Poirier Sport and Leisure Complex, located at 633 Poirier Street. And the recommendation is that Council consider the application by the City of Coquitlam for a permanent change to their liquor primary license for the Poirier Sport and Leisure Complex to allow for an expanded area where liquor may be served, and approved one of the two alternatives, either direct that a public consultation process be initiated in order to determine the neighborhood response and comment on this application, or opt out of commenting on this application, noting that the general manager of the Liquor Control and Licensing Branch may choose to conduct its own process to gather the views of residents and consider the regulatory criteria.
I'll move option 2.
Is there a seconder? Being none, is there another motion?
I'll move option 1. Second.
Moved by Councillor Robinson, second by Councillor Reamer. Option 1. Any discussion on option 1? Councillor Reid.
The reason I moved option 2 is because it's for us. So I didn't feel right in us directing a public consultation process be initiated. I thought if we opt out, the Liquor Control and Licensing Branch may choose to do its own process. I felt it was a little more arm's length than us doing it. So that's why I moved option 2. Thank you.
Councillor Robinson.
I could certainly see Councillor Reid's point. It's a logical one, but I actually sit on the other side. Is that we've conducted public consultation for any other application, and why would this be different, even if it is our own? So I think that I would rather have public consultation than not, and some of it just has to do with optics. That if we don't have public consultation, then that might look like we have something to hide. So I would much rather have public consultation and then forward that on to the appropriate authorities.
Yeah, this is probably 6 of one, half dozen of the other. Councillor Sikora.
Thank you very much. I don't know why we're even discussing this. We've had a liquor license in a Poirier Street complex since the early 60s or 50s. And now, because we're moving to a new building, that we're now applying for a license, I guess a renewed license, that we're going to be putting us and the people through mill of going to the neighborhood. I mean, the Poirier Street license has been there since 1960, so I think that that's good enough for me. I don't know why I want to invent the wheel.
Is there staff? Oh, Mr. Brock.
The application, Councillor, through the chair, is to allow for liquor to be served in the main arena during special events, during home games for the Coquitlam Express and for home games of the Senior Adnex. For the last 10 or 15 years during those games, we've had to go for a special occasion liquor license from the LCLB, and they have indicated to us that for us to go for 50 to 60 special occasion liquor license is not appropriate. It's more appropriate that we have that license in place, and since we're moving into a new stadium, that's the reason we brought it forward. It's simply to address that issue. The other liquor license, as you're quite right, Councillor Sikora, is in place and will function for the lounge, but this is a special occasion liquor license that has to be in place.
Okay. So the motion is option 1. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Councillor Reid is opposed. Councillor McDonnell is opposed. The motion carries. We'll go forward with the public consultation process, which might actually be followed up by the General Manager of Liquor Licensing. Ms. Clerk.
Item 8 is report of City Clerk, and it's in relation to the appointment of the Chief and Deputy Chief Election Officers. The recommendation is that Carrie Lohr be appointed Chief Election Officer and that Lauren Hewson be appointed Deputy Chief Election Officer for the 2010 by-election.
Moved by Councillor Reid, second by Councillor Reamer. Councillor Reamer.
Thank you. I just have a quick question. I'm just wondering, are we going to be hiring anybody from the outside, as we have done in the past, to work on the by-election?
We have an election assistant that we have brought in to assist us with administrative preparations for the by-election.
Okay, thank you.
And I should also fill in the public. The motion at the last meeting was to give the minister a bit more time, because he had got reported back that he understood the issue and wanted to clarify some things with his staff. He has since got back to us and said that in light of the non-unanimity, essentially, of the council motion, he has a bit of difficulty using unusual powers to grant us an exemption, so that left us with having a by-election, and this motion that's before us now would appoint the returning officer that would be necessary in order to facilitate or to put in place the by-election for our vacancy. Any further comments from council? Saying none. The motion is to appoint Carrie Lohr. I don't know what she did to deserve this. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 9 is report of City Clerk, and it relates to the 2010 calendar of events and a proposed amendment. And the recommendation is that Council approve an amendment to the 2010 calendar of events as follows. Rescheduling of the April 24th, 2010 Town Hall meeting to June 5th, 2010. And just as a note, this arises out of the need for the by-election and the fact that April 24th would be during the typical suspension of question period.
Okay. So moved. Moved by Councillor Robinson, second by Councillor McDonnell. Councillor Reid.
Well, I'm wondering why it couldn't be held in May, to start with, in the month of May. And June 5th, doesn't that coincide with the FCM meetings? And who's going?
Okay. Well, I see two questions, and let's...
Is it in May? It's usually the first week of June.
Ms. Lohr.
The by-election is proposed general voting day is May 15th. May 22nd is the May long weekend. May 29th is the weekend of the FCM.
No, I'm on the calendar of events.
And that's what she's describing. Sorry.
So May 22nd would be the
so
following Saturday, which is the long weekend, and the weekend after that would be the FCM, so the next available weekend would be June 5th.
So the FCM's earlier this year then?
The weekend of May 29th.
Okay, thank you. Just wanted to make sure you were all here and didn't leave me alone.
No. That's in fact why we're rescheduling. Any other comments, questions? Seeing none, to reschedule. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 10, report of City Clerk related to the Local Government Elections Task Force. The recommendation is that the report of the City Clerk dated March 9th, 2010 be forwarded to the Local Government Elections Task Force to serve as Council's official submission to the deliberations of the task force. So moved.
Moved by Councillor Reamer. Is there a seconder?
I'll second it.
Councillor Robinson seconds for discussion. Councillor Asmussen.
I won't be supporting this going forward. I don't think, and I said in my speech the last time, that council should be involved in the setting of dates or deciding whether an election should hold or not hold. I think that should be dealt with. BC Elections should be fully responsible for that, and I think that's the best way to go. So I won't be supporting this. Thank you.
Okay. Any other discussions related to that? Saying none. All in favor? Opposed? Councillor Sikora, Councillor McDonnell, Councillor Asmussen, Councillor Reid are opposed. Motion fails.
That concludes the items on the regular agenda.
I had one comment that I had suspended earlier because I wanted the crowd to be able to get right to the item that they wanted to get to, but it was related to some comments I made at the last council meeting. I didn't have the numbers at the time, and I do, the VANOC has now provided me the numbers, and I wanted to include them to recognize some of our community members who volunteered their time to make the Olympics and Paralympics extra special. A number of our Coquitlam residents joined the 25,000 volunteers who welcomed the world to BC. In fact, there were 566 Coquitlam residents who volunteered for the 2010 Winter Games. There are 187 residents who are donating their times to make the Paralympics run smoothly. The Vancouver 2010 Olympic and Paralympic Games are being recognized as one of the best hosted Winter Games in history, and news outlets are reporting that visitors to BC found Canadians to be the friendliest hosts yet. And this is in part due to the amazing contributions of those volunteers who worked endless hours to make sure everyone had a great time at the Olympic and Paralympic Games. So, Council, thank you to all of our volunteers who helped help British Columbia make its mark on the world. Councillor Sikora.
Yeah, on a new item, I'd like to ask the planning department, what is happening with Coma Lake Shopping Center? I'm getting an awful lot of calls. I've been there, and it's a living disaster. Whoever approved those, that parking lot in there? And another question on top of it is they're going to go for some more redevelopment. And we're going to ask them to redo that parking lot. Have they got their occupancy permit?
Mr. McIntyre.
Thank you, Worship. And yeah, we've been hearing about it as well. The facility, the shopping center, recently went through a development permit process, and the design for the parking lot is something the property owner, the developer, had his consultants do. It meets all the technical bylaw requirements, like in terms of the number of spaces. In fact, they have more spaces than is necessary under the bylaw, the size of spaces, believe it or not, and the aisle widths. The overall layout does have some problems, some complications. We've been in contact, discussion with the property owner and their consultants. They are now back revisiting the site and the plans. I believe they're out there either late last week or this week to revisit it, and they want to work with us in trying to make some improvements. So
Yes.
as we get some information in that regard, we will keep council posted.
Yeah, what's happening is that I'm hearing from a lot of people that said, I'll never go there again. It looks like they're losing 40% of their business because of the layout of the parking lot. So I think it needs to probably somebody to say redesign the parking lot or reconfigure it, whatever it needs. I'm not an expert in that, but it certainly has got its problems. Okay, thanks.
I'll certainly concur. City Hall doesn't design buildings, and we don't design people's parking lots. But there's no question that I've heard the same comments from the public. I've witnessed it myself. I shop there, or perhaps I used to shop there. I drive a small car. I drive a Prius, and it's sometimes hard to maneuver around that parking lot. I had a chance to speak with one of the representatives of the company that owns the property. They're a little bit frustrated with the parking consultant that designed the lot. They have committed to me, and I know they've committed to the planning department, that it is being redesigned. They're going to fix the things that have to be fixed. I hope they tackle it very well, because there's a heck of a messy parking lot out there, and I think that Councillor Sikora is right, and a lot of our residents have spoken to us and to others about this, and so thank you very much. Any other comments? Seeing none.
I'd just like to note that this evening's question period will be the last one prior to the by-election. In accordance with the council procedure bylaw, question period is suspended 30 days prior to a by-election or local general election.
There you go. But that allows tonight to go ahead. So, motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Asmussen, second by Councillor Reamer to adjourn. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. I'll open the floor to questions on tonight's agenda. Please state your name and address for the record, and we ask you to keep your questions short, brief, to the point, and without a preamble. Thank you. Sorry, we'll have to get the microphone put on here.
There we go.
Go ahead, Jane.
Okay, Jane Thompson, 3085 Primrose Lane. I would like to ask that the maps, which Councillor Robinson showed, and thank you very much, because we haven't seen those maps, that the maps from February 2009 and November 2009 be made public. So we need those on public record, and for us to be able to access those maps. But further to that, I would like that you provide a list of the sites that were removed last spring. So the sites that were removed from the February map to the November map, and also to know their size. I'd also like to know the additional sites that you're now proposing to remove and their sizes as well.
Okay, I'm afraid it's not really the way question period is for answers that we can give you tonight, but I'm sure that staff will follow up with those things. Those maps aren't produced by the city, they're produced by Metro Vancouver. This is their process. So
yeah, you had them available tonight though, so I just thought it would make it easier for Coquitlam residents.
I got a copy of them today as well. So
Coquitlam staff could provide
Mr. McIntyre?
public record.
Thank you, Worship. And certainly, yes, we can make those available in various formats. We've got some large copies we have out there front counter. We'll see what we can do about posting those on the city's website so people can extract them that way. The listing of lands, that'll take a little bit, but we can get that put together and get that information to council as well.
Right, and I'll just ask then, the list, I mean, basically it should come from the city, because this list was the recommended sites to change for the November map. So the city should have that, and their sizes. So that's why we need it to come from you. And this, I mean, there's a huge interest in this. So if you can make that available ASAP, that would be really greatly appreciated.
Mr. Mackin. I see a nod. Any other questions? Come right forward.
Elaine Willis, 2189 Summerwood Lane, Anmore. Mayor Stewart, you talked about when people work together, how much better things are just a few moments ago on one of your items. And Councillor Robinson, when you were bringing forth your motion that wasn't seconded, you talked about some the overview of the land being really helpful, and we share the air and the watershed and the land in our adjacent municipalities. You talked about many of you councillors, when you spoke, talked about a distrust of the process with Metro Vancouver, which to me was offers like a Senate process where you have almost a sober second thought when we are going to look at land use. And there was a distrust that I heard. What I noticed in the room was a distrust of the process here, and I'm just wondering if you sensed that when people were here and maybe shouting questions inappropriately to you.
I'm sorry, did I notice? I'm sorry, the question period is for people to get clarification of issues that came up.
Well, the question is, did you sense that distrust? I mean, my concern was, if you're distrusting Metro's process, was there not a distrust of the process that happened tonight? I mean, I don't understand.
Okay, well, I'm sorry. I can act on the way I feel. I'm not sure I can act on... are you asking me if I anticipate how other people feel? I understand how they feel. I know that. And that's why every member of council sought to give them more information about where we're at, and the issue got referred back so that I suspect more information can be provided, and we'll be able to work better with the residents. Question period is to ask questions primarily of staff to get clarification of issues that came up at a council meeting. So
okay, so it's not to get clarification from things that were said by the council? I apologize, I'm sorry.
Okay, I'm sorry. Well, we publish our procedures, and these are the procedures that council has asked me to enforce.
I really did misunderstand, and I do apologize. I'm
okay,
sorry.
Thank you.
Good evening, Peter Endish from Coquitlam. I'll be very direct and a little less polite than usual, because I think tonight's evening warrants that. To paraphrase Councillor Reamer, indeed it would be idiotic to develop the golf course, but I don't see that happening. However,
do you have a question?
Yes, I have a question. Okay. But just like any of the councillors here, you know, you need to give a little bit of background before you get to the question. So I would
actually no. Our council procedures. Yeah. You know the council's procedures.
Yes, I do.
We've spoken to them about them before. Right. You agree to them, and then you come up and you give a preamble. I'm just. Could you
well,
just
I give a preamble. So
can you ask a question? I know there are other people in the audience who want to ask questions. Could you ask your question, please?
Mr. Mayor, you're testing my patience as well. because I like to give a bit of a preamble within the time allotted to me, so I can.
Then you're going to have to
so
do
my
it by
question
email,
can be
because
better
our council
understood.
procedures are pretty specific, and you know them.
And I will.
Every time we have this discussion, you agree with them, and then you get up to the microphone and you.
No,
Please
Mr. Mayor,
ask your
I will
question.
ask a question if you give me the time.
Mr. Endish, please ask your question.
Fair enough. The conservation and recreation area designation says that the designation protects areas of ecological and outdoor recreational significance, including drinking watersheds, conservation areas, critical habitat, forest, wetlands, major parks, and recreation areas. Now, I understand that in order to change anything under the designation, you need 2/3 of vote and you need public hearing. That's far more than you will ever get from urban rural. So I'd like to understand why, and this is my question, would you start spreading fear-mongering that this, that the Metro Vancouver process is flawed and will give us less power as citizens to decide over our green spaces, when in fact, what I'm reading is that if we leave it under the designation currently have, there'll be more public input and a higher voting percentage to really represent what the public feels should be done with those lands. So what makes you think that, downgrading the zone will actually give more power to the citizens of Coquitlam to decide over their green spaces?
This isn't actually an opportunity to debate it, but I did explain quite clearly.
It's not a debate, it's a question.
I did explain quite clearly what makes me concerned here, and one of the biggest concerns I have is that with all of the debate that's going on here, the regional growth strategy actually won't pass. It won't be adopted. And all of the protections you're talking about won't be adopted because there are too many communities that are starting to get concerned about these processes. So if you want to take that as an answer, that's one of my big concerns. But this is actually primarily to ask clarifications of technical issues related, and you know that, I know that, but this is
well, I think
an
goes a little bit
opportunity to
beyond
ask technical questions related to clarification of issues that came up during the council meeting.
Well, I mean, I think it was a legitimate question because I'm puzzled as to why you guys think it's better than the rest.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Are there any other questions?
Yes, Terry O'Neill, 1331 Steeple Drive, Coquitlam. In item number 8, it was agreed that returning officer would be appointed. No date for the by-election was actually stated there, and I think in item number 9, it was mentioned very quickly what the date was, and I just wanted to confirm what the date of the by-election is.
The date was in the report proposed for May 15th, so the general voting day will be May 15th.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, council doesn't actually set that. There was a staff report that includes the date in the staff report, and perhaps we should have been clear. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jack Trumley. I'm 2314 Sumter Drive. The question I have, and I applaud Councillor McDonnell's setting up the Sports Council and the funding for it. It does put other groups, stakeholders, in a bit of a disadvantage because we have funding to actually move the process through to lobby the City Council for more funding. My question is, we want to be very specific, if this is very successful, that we include other stakeholders involved in this process as well. One, what's the time frame to look forward to and say this is still going to work? And two, we also include not only arts and cultural group, but also environmental groups. Because I think what you've seen tonight is environmentalist groups, environment is very important here as well. Are we going to include those as well? That's my question.
In response to the question around the timetable, the term of the Sports Council is 18 months, so an appropriate time for a final review of that term would be at the 18 months. However, there could be an interim review anytime throughout that process. Council has expressed an interest in looking at more opportunities for groups to work collaboratively, and their leadership has identified the areas of sports as well as culture and arts at this time. So those are within the work plans right now for leisure and parks. But I would expect that Council will be monitoring the success of those councils for possible consideration around the creation of other advisory committees in the future.
Is that supported by Council here that it may look at environmental groups as well to include as part of this process?
Well, I'm going to look at Councillor McDonnell. Councillor McDonnell is the chair of the committee that looks at all of those issues that Ms. McKay just referred to, and I suspect that you're going to be well placed to have a conversation with Councillor McDonnell afterwards to see how we can advance that.
Okay, fair enough.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Forward.
Hi, my name is Tania Sanchez. I live in 3321 Plateau Boulevard. Last meeting I attended, I asked the question, why will you choose to propose General Urban as a land designation for Westwood Plateau Golf Course and Country Club? And so my question today is, I got this paper from the Urban and Rural Containment Boundaries and Smart Growth PC. This was a study made by UBC and is peer-reviewed, and it says the general urban is greater than 10 dwelling units per hectare. So my questions to you is, if you are up to, conserve all our land or green spaces and stuff, why would you propose land use that designate 10 units per hectare? And the other question is, now that it's referred to you, that this issue is going to be referred to you again, does that involve to change this proposal, to change the land use designation to something else and withdraw the one that you did before? Thank you.
I'm going to anticipate that the answer to one is that the general urban is a different definition depending on which document you read. In the case of the regional growth strategy, it includes all kinds of land uses, not just residential. But Mr. McIntyre.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship, and that is correct. The general urban area in the regional plan, it's quite an umbrella. It includes residential at various densities. It includes a range of commercial. It also includes other institutional, schools, churches, parks. It can be a range of land uses within that general urban umbrella.
But you have identified one of the issues that Council had is that the terminology is too limiting. We need to find better terms, and I think that aspect of the regional growth strategy will go back to the committee for consideration. I know I've heard of some people tonight who were talking about a golf course designation or an intensive recreation designation that properly places these valued facilities in the right designation. So, thank you. Okay, fine. The referral is so that the Land Use Committee can re-examine that issue. And we heard from several members tonight that said, and it's going to be before the Regional Growth or Regional Planning Committee as well, the issue of what we designate land as. And one of those opportunities is to create a designation that simply is golf course or intensive recreation or some other thing. Council can't refer something back to the Land Use Committee and tell them what to decide. So the Land Use Committee will debate it and work through it, and I suspect work with residents and try to find a designation or some other solution that puts everyone's minds at ease, but also moves us forward in trying to solve this challenge. Okay? Any other questions? Please come forward. You actually have to come forward. We broadcast on the internet, and in order to do that, we actually have to capture the voice by microphone. So
my name is Maya Burston. I live at 3222 Norwood Court in Coquitlam, and my question is, can we have a fresh start on Land Use Committee and appoint different people on Land Use Committee to have completely fresh start if you want to go that route?
Okay, well, we just did. I have absolute faith in the Land Use Committee, and I believe, as expressed by them today, they have lots of issues related to and lots of history on these issues. So I don't have any, but thank you very much for the question. And that ends question period. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a good evening.